Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. There must be gremlins in the studio this morning. I had to get out of the studio, come back in. My guest was on time, and he couldn't hear me. And you know what? We fixed it up. The magic of technology. Not bad for a guy who had a brain injury a few years ago. I'm still struggling back from that one. No excuses today. Hey, listen, we are live. Live streaming is the next generation of broadcasting. They used to call it podcasts, the iPod, but now we're shows. So we are on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter feeds. While you're watching, you can post a comment. I'll see it in the studio. We'll put it on the screen if it's worthy of conversation with our guest. Well, now I can tell you about another book I just landed in my lap. This one here, it's called Life in the Pits by Brad Schaeffer. Now, you know what? You could read this thing fast and go and not look at it properly and say, life is the pits. And you could nod your head and say, yeah, that's true too. Evocative, awesome cover. He's back again for his second interview since 2021. I haven't talked to him that much, but he's back because of this amazing book. We're going to bring it all together. I'm going to just tell you a bit about him, and then we'll bring him into the studio. Brad Schaeffer, born in Baltimore, Maryland, grew up in the suburb of Chicago. And after attending the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, he lived in Chicago, where he embarked on this dual career as a commodity trader, author, novelist. Now, you got to ask yourself, commodity trader, a writer, and oh, yeah, he's a musician, too. Guy's a little messed up, but actually there's quite a bit to him. He resides in New Jersey. I hope that's correct. We'll check that out. But his prolific and eclectic writing can be found on places like Wall Street Journal, the New York Daily News, National Review, Daily Wire, other publications. Now get this, his interest is reflected in those articles, covers things like business, science, education, arts, history, politics, social issues, general day-to-day living. And he was just showing me something in his studio based on a map of what's going on in part of the world. This guy is a maven of information. He's also accomplished guitarist and pianist. You can see my guitar back there. It'd be kind of fun to riff with him. I'm sure he'll knock the heck out of me. But that's pretty cool. He's been in several bands, played it over the years. Now we get into what a fascinating piece of his story is. He's an author, published author. Another Time and Place he wrote in 2018 was in World War II in Europe. And The Extraordinary, that's why he was with us in 2021. That book really caught my attention because it touched on the topics of autism and PTSD. He's got a relatable story. Are you out of breath? Are you tired of listening to me? It's amazing. But we finally end up here. Brad's back to talk about life in the pits. So here he is. Hey, Brad, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Hey, Tom. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're a humble guy, so I kind of, do the intro, and you're sitting there.
I've been accused of that before, so I appreciate that.
Now tell us, where are you? Where do you live right now, and what are we looking at on the screen? Where
I'm currently in Westfield, New Jersey. So if anybody's seen the Netflix series The Watcher, that took place in Westfield, New Jersey. Also, it's the home of Charles Addams, who started the Addams family. And we also have here in Westfield a distinction of being the scene of a quadruple homicide.
Oh, gosh.
The List murders. And the interesting story about that is the guy killed his whole family, right, to start a new life, right? And he had financial trouble. And apparently the story is that the whole time he had this financial troubles, above him was a Tiffany lampshade or something like that basically was worth more than all of his financial issues. No. He literally had, and he was found on America's Most Wanted. He was the first guy on the run the first cold case file they put on America's Most Wanted. And so anyway, it was the List murder. So that whole show, The Watcher, that was on Netflix, kind of combines those three sort of macabre aspects of Westfield. So, but it's a wonderful town. I love it. I've been living here for, since 97. So I've been living here a long time.
Well, first of all, I got to give you kudos. I mean, props to all this knowledge you have. We're going to learn why that is. Very entertaining. Secondly, man, to have roots in one place and stay there a long time, especially in this world, is pretty remarkable. before we get into the program, for everybody watching, we're going to edit some things out to make it seamless, but I'm going to do some extra in between here. Brad, we're going to take you into Plato's Garden. Are you ready to do that? Plato's Garden, we'll explain what that is. We're going to have conversations in Plato's Garden. Then we have some really exciting things planned for you, a segment called Imagining with AI, something new we're doing. We're going to do some recognition as well, a little surprise for you as well about your new book. By the time I'm done with you, man, you're either going to be smiling or you're going to be crushed on the floor of that office of yours.
Or both.
A little bit of both. But before we get into Plato's Garden, I'm going to widescreen here the shot. Sorry if you're on the podcast, you can't see this, but watch it on YouTube. By the way, subscribe to the channel so we can get the analytics going. Brad, you were talking to me. That is your office, you commodities trader and things you do. But there was a map. Tell me about what you were telling me so the audience can learn. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, actually, this map here you're talking about?
Or yeah, what you were just telling me. Just tell it again.
Well, this one, first of all, just has every pipeline of natural gas that spiderwebs throughout the United States. So I use that for reference when I trade. Yeah. But this one actually was given to me by a very dear friend of mine named J.D. Griffin, who was my old roommate. And it's hard to tell, but this is actually somewhat of a famous piece of work. And what it is a diagram of Napoleon's army size when it invaded Russia in 1812, and by the time it retreated back. And it's hard to tell maybe from here, but this kind of beigeish color, you can see how wide that is.
Yeah.
That width represents 400,000 troops, right? Which is roughly what Napoleon had when he invaded Russia, right?
Yeah.
By the time it gets up to, I'm trying to do this here. It's hard to do it.
You're doing good.
By the time it gets up to Moscow, it's down to like maybe a third of that number. And then the black is his retreat. So by the time he gets back to where he started in the spring of 1813, I guess that would be, I'm not sure the actual dates, his army had gone from 400,000 down to about 10,000. And the Russian winter and Cossacks and everything got the rest. And I was telling you, I keep that as a reminder. Not only is it a really cool piece of artwork, very historic, but also is a reminder of how quickly even the fortunes of, like in this case, great warriors can change very quickly if you're not careful. And it only takes one mistake, one stupid error, one loss of discipline in our profession to have to go from 400,000 men to 10,000. One of my favorite lines, and I think I mentioned it in the book even, is by Mike Campbell from the book The Sun Also Rises. He was asked, how did you go bankrupt? And he said 2 ways. First slowly and then quickly.
Wow.
And so I kind of keep those as a reminder of.
They're great.
Yeah, of how easy it is to go from being, Napoleon, the conqueror of Europe, to Napoleon, the exile.
Yeah, that's
self-inflicted wounds, right?
That's incredible. We're time-stamping this show, obviously, with this point in time, but I just had this thought that came into my head that it would be incredible, I think, if we look years out. And one of those maps will be done about what's happening in the Europe right now, particularly Ukraine. Unbelievable. And I think you just set us up to go into Plato's Garden, because what you were just doing there, and you'll know in a minute what I mean, is called critical thinking. Today's interview is going to be about critical thinking. So let's take you into Plato's Garden. Let me just set this up for a minute, okay? So I'm going to change the thing on the screen here for a sec, Brad. All right. So 3, just stand by. 3, 2, 1. Everybody, we're with Brad Schaeffer, multiple author, commodities trader, and just an all-around eccentric, amazing musician, I'm told. And we're going into Plato's Garden. Check it out on the screen there, Brad. We've got an image. It could have been Plato's Garden. So I'm going to just read this. Plato was an Athenian philosopher during the classical period in ancient Greece, founder of the Platonist school of thought and the academy, from the word academia, which is cool, the first institution apparently of a higher learning in the Western world. Now, if we go one step further, what we're going to do in the conversation is we're not going to be talking heads and I ask you a question and you just talk back. No, we're about storytelling, but we're going to be talking about the influences of context around, Brad, your entire public life and work. So we may talk about macro, which is what was happening in the global world around you at the time where you started creating your public agency or work. And when I think about that, I think about things like all the things you did, your books, your musical, etc. Or we may get into meso. Meso is what's happening in the sector where you are, where you do your public work. And finally, my favorite, Brad, is micro. Micro is about you personally. What was going on with you personally throughout your life that influenced you? When we get into all these areas, Brad, we dig deeper and we find insights. When we connect those insights, it actually reveals more about your identity, who you are. And sometimes we find hidden meanings. I had Brad here before in 21 when he talked about his first book, Extraordinary. So this question kind of connects us, Brad, back to that episode, and then we'll move forward. And I call this from the depths to the heights. So, Brad, your journey from experiencing profound loss in your youth to becoming a successful trader and author, I think, is remarkable. In Life in the Pits, your new book, you recount your time on the rough and tumble trading floors. So how did your early challenges you faced, especially your father's tragic passing, prepare you for a high-stakes world of trading? Get into it.
Well, I think when you suffer a pretty severe loss at a young age, which is what I did.
How old were you?
It was my father died 2 days after my 16th birthday.
Goodness.
And he died by suicide. He had PTSD. He was a Korean War veteran. He was a Marine, actually wounded in action. So I would tell people he was a true Saving Private Ryan experience. He was frontline lieutenant, second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. And he came back and he had PTSD, probably didn't realize it at the time. He probably had it off and on for 30 years until it finally, I think, got the better of him. And, back then they called it battle fatigue or whatever. They didn't really talk about it like they do now. But I think what it teaches you is that, it's just money, which is what I do. And there's a reason beyond, and there's an old expression, right? And again, I write it in the book, which says, anybody who says money doesn't matter never stood in the bread line, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was, I forget who said it, but somebody said, I've been rich, I've been poor, and believe me, rich is better. So I'm not trying to diminish the importance of money, but I think psychologically to succeed in trading over a long period of time, and it took me a long time to get to this place actually, requires a lot of psychological discipline. And part of that discipline is not freaking out when you lose money. In fact, being in a mindset where you realize that losing money is part of your profession. Just like if you're a race car driver, having a pit stop, having a blown tire, that's all going to be part of your profession. It has to be kind of baked in the cake, right?
Yeah.
And I think with me, because I'd experienced real traumatic loss at such a young age, that losing a few $1,000s, although it was discomforting, it didn't affect me, and it still doesn't the way it does some guys who may have the knack. They might have the they might have the mental acuity. They certainly probably understand financial theory better than I do. They're probably smarter, probably higher IQs. Went to the best schools. You double majored in bio and physics at Harvard, whatever it is. But so much of what we do is psychological, and I think learning to take hits at a young age kind of prepared me for a business which is nothing but taking hits.
Yeah, no, that's
try to diminish them, and right, it should be the smaller. Your trading should be several very big trades, very big good trades, and a few small losing trades, right? And taking a loss is part of it, and so I learned that at a young age.
Absolutely, and it's funny because one of the follow-ups I was thinking of asking you from that was because of the. By the way, we're sorry for your dad's loss. Obviously, honor him for his service to his country. I wanted to see if you can remember a specific time on the trading floor where that perspective you just shared about your dad's perspective on like that money is transient, it's just money, etc. Yeah. Can you remember a specific time on the trading floor where that played a crucial role in a decision?
Not so much that, but I can remember the guys that I fed off of back then on the trading floor were the old salts, right?
Yeah.
There was a guy who passed away a while back, but I mentioned him in the book. And most of the names are pseudonyms in the book just to protect their identity, but they know who they are, right? And this guy's he reminded me of like a snapping turtle. He kind of almost looked like Oscar the Grouch a little bit, right? He was an old skull trader, right? And so if I would make a trade, right, when you trade options, you have to have some futures contracts, right, to theoretically lock in the profit. And sometimes you miss your trade, right? You buy an option thinking you can sell X, and you end up selling X minus one once the actual time goes by. From the time you do the trade to the time you try to execute, the market moves, right? And I'd bitch and moan, and then he would say, Brad, you should really complain about that, because that's the first time that's ever happened down here. And basically with these guys, so what they reminded me was taking a loss, and all these guys just reminded that taking a loss is part of the game.
Yeah.
And so again, it started off with my dad, but I think I kind of just from being in an arena where losing is part of the process. It's not like, it's kind of like I guess the best analogy would be baseball, right?
Yes.
You're going to strike out more than you're going to hit a home run, right? But Ted Williams, what was his lifetime batting average? 320 something? Yeah. And he's considered the greatest hitter of all time, which means he failed 70% of the time, right? And I know that sounds almost like a motivational speaker gig, whatever type of cliche, right? Thomas Edison learned 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb, right? That whole thing. But there's truth to that, and very often cliche is built around truth. And so
exactly.
You clear yourself early to make a loss. You realize that's part of the game, and as long as you don't make it catastrophic, like our friend Napoleon there, you're all right.
It's pretty amazing. We've been talking about the book. Let's get into it now. So, Brad, hold up that beautiful cover. If you can just put it on screen there. Can you read the title out to us so everybody hears that?
It's hard to read on here. It says, Life in the Pits, My Time as a Trader on the Rough and Tumble Exchange Floors.
And let's keep it up there for a minute. We got stereo books here. Hey, everybody, look what I got. And Brad even wrote something in it to me. You're awesome, Brad. You can put that down there. We'll tell you all at the end, everyone, how you can get this book. Also, there's a couple other books that Brad's written. And let me just put up an image here on the screen. The Extraordinary was one of my favorites next to this one. Obviously, that's the first time I met Brad. When you're interested in more about what Brad talked about, everyone, his backstory, go to the previous episode in 2021. You'll find it on my podcast page, okay? But today we're going to move forward. So, Brad, the interesting thing about this book is when I got into it, what I loved about it, and I've made notes all over it, is it's in a storytelling or narrative style. So just tell us quickly, why did you write this book? And then I got something I want to throw at you so we can riff on it.
Well, I remember, I've been a trader on the floor of the Chicago Merc. First I was a clerk, and then I became a trader. And I believe you lose track of years. I want to say 1989 to I finally went over the counter in 1994. Was it, or 96 maybe? I forget which date it was. So anyway, so I was a trader in my formative years in finance, right? And back then, when you were a state schooler out of Illinois, when your major was speech communication, it wasn't like guys were beating down, guys from Goldman Sachs were beating down the door to get to you, right? They were looking at the Ivies, and they were looking at the finance majors and all that. So the trading floor to me was a great backdoor entry for the state school non-credentialed type to get into finance. And some of the wealthiest people who have moved on in Wall Street started on the trading floor as like menial runner and then whatever menial clerk. But what actually prompted me to write the book was I remembered in 2016, I'd read a story that the last trading pits in New York, which is where I used to trade also, as well as Chicago, were closing down. And I thought that was a pretty important announcement that kind of got not really talked about too much. I mean, these trading floors, like the Chicago Board of Trade, I want to say was around 13 years before the start of the Civil War, for example. So these were iconic pits that were really part of the American economic sinew for generations.
Yeah.
And there were generations of workers, people who were down on the floor, guys whose grandfathers were cattle traders, So that was a whole business that within 10, maybe 15 years was completely erased by technology. And I knew a lot of guys down there who I remember thinking, these guys aren't going to make it if we go over the counter and everything becomes more analytical and less physical and the way we used to do it, right? And so I wrote an article for the Wall Street Journal saying almost the trading floor, basically lamenting the fact that a lot of these incubators of talent that would have otherwise gone unnoticed, right, by the recruiters of the big hedge funds and stuff like that, was a great place to be. And now that door had been closed. And I thought that was a real shame. I thought that hurt not just these people and their livelihoods who didn't have the Wharton MBA or something like that, but also I think it hurt the financial system because a lot of the guys who became over-the-counter traders and hedge fund managers, whatever, who came from the floor, had that kind of sense of, had that sense of understanding human nature, which I think some quants lack. And the best example of that would be long-term capital management, what I was getting at, and I mentioned it again in my book. And that was the hedge fund that had all the John Merriweather from, who used to be Solomon Brothers. He's actually featured in Michael Lewis's first chapter in Liar's Poker. Some Scholes from the Black-Scholes model, which is what we use to price options. So you had some Nobel laureates in there. You had some really, really, really sharp guys, but they were so focused on their models that they didn't realize that there was more to trading than just reading value and spitting out a bid or an ask. Is that a lot of it has to do with human nature, and because markets are nothing more really than human constructs, right? They're expressions of a million decisions moved in amalgam in one way or another, but they're kind of like a shoal of fish. There's no way to say which one did the first move, right? But you all kind of go that way. And if you're one of these fish who thinks that you should be going this way because your model says so, you're going to get run over. And that's exactly what happened to these guys. So I felt like something was lost in the finance business too, because the Israelis have something they call, I believe, the 11th man. Somebody get me if I get the number wrong, but their job is, if 10 guys in the Mossad think this is how this attack's going to happen, the 11th guy, his job is to imagine a different way, right? No matter how far-fetched it is, right? So it'll be like if 10 German guys were saying, oh, the Allies are going to land at Calais. There was one guy saying, no, I think they might be landing at Normandy. We should look at that, right? And I think that broke down at October 7th with them. And I think you lost that in finance as well. You lost that guy who's like, I don't know, man, I've been on the trading floor before. And these guys, there's that line from Trading Places, right? They're panicking. I can feel it. They're panicking, right? And
I was going to jump in there and just riff with you. This is storytelling back and forth. First of all, the 12th man, Seattle Seahawks. I mean, I go down there because I live in Vancouver. You reminded me of there's always another man somewhere.
Yeah.
The thing about
Texas A&M, right?
Exactly. The thing I love about this book and why I'm recommending it highly for people to check out is because you brought us back to an era. A lot of people didn't know, but what I find remarkable is when you said the technology was just basically erased. Brad, you might not know, or maybe I told you before, but my background, first third of my career was banking, and back then everything was paper based, selling mutual funds, all that stuff. I was a branch manager to start, and the portfolios were all done on paper. Know your client, all this stuff. And then they opened up through one of the big banks here where clients could get stock accounts and things. So you're taking me back into my world. That's what I love about the book, because it evokes everybody. If you're not from the industry, it doesn't matter. It evokes feelings and stories connected to your life, which helps you learn more about yourself through Brad. But when I read the book, what was really amazing is it took me into the trading floor, as you say. And by the way, jargon's not something I'm good at. So OTC, over the counter. You can explain that when we give it back. But I want to throw out another question here just to get you thinking on this. I wrote here the new book. So this book, obviously, Life in the Pits, I think it vividly captures the chaos, Brad, and intensity of the trading pits. I mean, the stories are remarkable. These environments seem to be brutal, but you thrived. So give us a couple lessons that you learned about, I guess, human nature and survival in such what seems to be an unforgiving place, and how they shaped your approach to life beyond trading. So now we're connecting the other things you're doing, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, the first thing it taught me was that, you said it's an unforgiving place because it's an unforgiving world.
Yeah.
And so one of the first things I learned when I went down there was that nobody owes you a living. And what do I mean by that? It's basically any entitlement culture you have, any sense of entitlement is obliterated when you walk through there, because nobody cared, I should say. I hate speaking about it in the past tense, but nobody cared about your Harvard MBA. Nobody cared about, whether or not your thesis was on, flow mechanics and how it is affecting the zero gravity environment, anything like that. All they cared about was, do you know how to buy nines and sell tens and do that a lot? Can you get a feel for the market? Are you good at turning a little bit of money into a lot of money without taking an enormous risk in the process, right? And so I stood, and I use this as my standard example because I just find it so emblematic, is that one side of me, I stood next to a Harvard Law graduate. The other side of me, I stood next to a high school dropout tennis pro who looked like Steven Stills circa 1969.
No way. That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, he had the lamb chops, he had the long hair, and they were both equally good traders.
And you're still kind of a kid yourself, right? You
Oh
must
gosh,
be.
I was 21 when I was down there, right? I got my seat when I was 22, I think. So 21 or 22. I was one of the younger traders down there. So again, that's why I kind of gravitated towards the old salts. But I also had an advantage because I'll tell you one thing else that my father's death taught me, just kind of get back to what we were talking about before, is the importance of family. And
Yes.
I was very fortunate. I was the youngest of 5. And one of my brothers was a trader on the floor of the exchange. And so, I say, my favorite isms of Wall Street are capitalism, cronyism, and nepotism, right?
Wow.
So capitalism I love, cronyism I loathe.
Who are they?
Who are they? Oh, the woman on the left is my mother, who just passed away a couple of years ago. And the man on the right is my father getting his Purple Heart on a Swedish hospital ship after being wounded in action in Korea. So that's Second Lieutenant John M. Schaeffer, about the same age I was when I went on the trading floor.
Well, there's an emotional moment I threw up there. You start talking about your family and importance.
Yeah.
Everybody, I just want to honor Brad for what you're doing. A lot of people, when you talk to them, everyone, about their careers, at least my experience, they don't talk about their parents as much. Brad's connected all these dots, and so a lot of what he's experienced and we experience through our parents shapes us, right, Brad? Hey, I know in the book there's some stories. Was there any funny moments or one person who sort of was a key relationship for you that kind of led you through that?
Well, I guess the key relationship, besides my brother Todd, who was a trader, he's actually who the book's dedicated to. JTS was his badge on the floor. So besides him and his partner, who I call Max in the book, but he knows who he is, one of the funniest guys I ever met, and I'm still in touch with him, would be a guy who in the book I call JR, but his real name is JD Griffin. He was the guy who gave me that.
Yeah.
The guy gave me that map of Russia, which he was very, very patient, and he taught me a lot about the fundamentals of the markets, how to clerk, how to do the hand signals. It was like learning another language. And he was one of these guys who had these. Actually, he's still alive. He's a very good friend of mine. I still talk to him. He's out in Frisco now, that area. But he taught me a lot about patience because he was so freaking patient with me, man. Because I was asking 1,000 questions. Remember,
Yes.
my job before this was an artist. I wasn't even in finance, right? So I didn't even know what an option was or the future was. I knew nothing about it. And they threw me in the deep end, and he just kind of guided me through it to the point where I ended up being, when he got his badge, as we used to say, he got his trading seat and went to trade. I became the number one clerk behind my boss, who was one of the sharpest traders I've ever met and one of the most interesting guys I've ever met. But there were so many interesting people down there, and I think they all had some sort of an influence on me.
Yeah.
And if for an author, if you're looking for characters, good Lord, a trading floor, I borrow a line from Dennis Miller in the book. Dennis Miller one time joked and said, I guess I should have credited it actually, but he said it made the Mos Eisley Cantina in Star Wars look like an IBM convention. Right? So JD was really a good mentor of mine, as was my brother, but there were just so many funny events down there, and they would abuse the newcomers on the floor, and that's part of the
hazing.
Yeah, hazing, right? That's part of the ego atomization process that went down there, and it's almost like boot camp in a way. And like one of the jokes we used to do was we would take you take like a trading card, right, and you tear it diagonally, so it's like that, and then you fold this bottom part up and you put it behind somebody. Next thing you know, the guy's walking around with a fin on his back. And so he would be screaming, help, help. My first week there, they actually stapled a bunch of fins together, so it looked like a big serrated thing, and they stuck them on my back. And then they asked me to do the Dino sound, so I'm walking around the floor going, with my Dino skills. Yeah, we used to like take back then the old Tic Tac boxes were very hard, right? They were hard. They weren't like today, which is soft plastic. So, and the floor was rubber, right? And so for some reason it amplified sound if you drop something. So of course you're in the middle of the trading pit and you're screaming and yelling at each other. And some guy go, hey, let me see those glasses, right? I want to check them out. So you grab them and then you pretend to drop them. And as you pretend you're palming them, and as you pretend to look for them, you crush the Tic Tac box and make a loud. And the guy, and I mean this type of stuff went all day. We had one guy, not we, but somebody convinced this one guy that he won the lottery. He actually stuffed a winning ticket from last week's drawing into his new drawing.
Yeah.
So this guy's going through his tickets and he thinks he won. He's about to tell his boss what he really thinks of him.
That's fun. That's too funny.
He did a lot of that though, but it was to lighten the tension because it was very intense. You would go through periods where you're just sitting around and we'd actually sing the REM song "Stand in the Place Where You Work."
That's cool.
All of a sudden, a number with it, and what I mean by number in terms of the vernacular is an announcement would come out. We just call them numbers. We say, hey, a number's about to come, right? And we do this hand signal. And it might be the retail sales number. It might be the unemployment number that came out the first Friday of every month at 7:30 a.m. sharp. And if there wasn't anything like that going on, though, and the market was just drifting, you had a lot of free time. And gambling was going on all the time. I had to flee to Russia because he gambled so much on NCAA games that he had to flee the country because these guys in the crew pit were going to kill him.
Man, that could be book two. That could be book 2.0.
Coming back paying them.
That could be the next chapter in the next book. I just want to riff back and forth. Everybody, you're here with Brad Schaeffer. Brad, hold the book up again and just tell us the title again.
Life in the Pits, My Time as a Trader on the Rough and Tumble Exchange Floor. Yeah.
If you're on the podcast, you can't see the cover, but there's an image of the old trading floor. It reminds me of that movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy. And actually, just not long ago, I interviewed a woman on the show here. Her name was Patricia Chadwick, and she's written a book called The Witch of Wall Street. And so she talks about how she broke through the glass ceiling. And it's funny because reading her book from a female perspective and yours from a male perspective, very, very interesting insights and differences. Everybody, are you getting a sense that Brad's kind of fun? I mean, again, if you take, that's why you have to connect the dots, because if I said Brad Schaeffer, the commodities trader, it's like, okay. But Brad, really, when I start looking at the fact that, musician and writer, these are creative types of personalities. So I can kind of see how you, first of all, you navigate the sadly, the death of your father, the PTSD story. Mm-hmm. Then you get into this very brutal world. And I like what you said about the trading floor, because I heard you say the world is brutal. But man, there's many people, and you see some of these stories, and I know it's Hollywood doesn't always portray it, but Wolf of Wall Street, and then there's cocaine, there's depression, there's suicides. The pressure in that cooker, and I know from being a CEO in a corporate sector where there's pressure, but nothing like this. That's why this book is so awesome, everyone, because it's got stories that put you there. So now I'm going to ask you just to read something to us. Pick up your book there, Brad. And everybody, everybody loves an author reading because you get to hear the author's voice. So I'm going to set this up, Brad. But while I do, I want you to go to page 158, second paragraph where it says, as the fires, and I'm going to set it up, and I'm going to have you just read that from as the fires down to about
9/11, yeah.
Yeah, so go from as the fires down to the second paragraph, just where it says in the aftermath. Have you ever been curious of what it's like to be a commodities trader in the pits? Well, we're going to have author Brad Schaeffer read us a short passage.
Well, this passage is about what I saw on 9/11. Is that what you want me to read, or do you want me to read about the trading pits?
No, just that particular.
Well, just basically, okay, to give your guys a background, is by that point I had left the floor and I was working in Jersey City at a brokerage firm, and so we basically watched the planes hit during. We were right across the river in Jersey City. So here's just I wrote a little bit about it in the book just to show people that there is some humanity on Wall Street. As the fires grew more intense, the gravity of what was happening sank in even before the towers buckled and collapsed, one then the other, and people all around me began to cry and moan. One broker standing next to me was in tears. I asked him blankly if he was okay. He looked at me with forlorn shock. My two brothers are up there. They too worked for Cantor Fitzgerald, and they both died. You know the rest about that day. But what I don't think many outside our industry know was just how much we pulled together as a professional community in the aftermath. So that's what you wanted? Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you, Brad. Now, let's just want to talk on that a little bit with you. So everyone, as I said, the book is, in my opinion, a roller coaster of emotions and fun and ups and downs and this crazy, what it would be like on the trading floor before technology sort of wiped out that whole process. But then you come across this chapter, Brad, and that's why I picked it. The chapter's called 9/11. And I mean, that even evokes in me a gasp, a little bit of cortisol is starting to flood because I've heard the stories. So just for a moment, that what you read there is surreal to us, but tell us a bit about those days, or particularly that moment. And then I read somewhere in the book it said about how the public didn't really see how the industry came together. So talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I'm actually Wall Street gets a reputation for being a bunch of cutthroats, and it is. Usually, guys at the top of the hedge fund business are probably some of the sharper. I'm not at the top of the hedge fund business, just to be clear. But some guys who are very sharp guys and have a bit of cutthroat. Even my boss, who I describe in the book as having a slight air of menace, there's something about some of these traders that is a little bit menacing, And however, after 9/11, when I was at Prebon, was the name of the company I was at. I was a broker there, and in the World Trade Center were two competitors. There's Cantor Fitzgerald and Eurobrokers, and both of those companies got hit very hard. Cantor Fitzgerald lost, I think, 2/3 of its workforce.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know
you didn't work in the towers, obviously. So just
no. I actually did. I actually did work in the Eurobroker area briefly before moving over to across the river. So I used to work in the World Trade Centers, but not during that time. I did survive the February blast, that when they tried to topple it, when they knocked down the towers, when they tried to knock down the towers in the parking lot. That was February '93. I was actually several hundred feet over that blast when it happened. So I joke in the book, I moved to New York and they keep trying to kill me.
That's crazy.
But what happened was we had a lot of empty desks because brokerage firms and trading firms are always like adding personnel or getting rid of desks. So there's always like these dormant spaces that you have, right? In anticipation of growing, or maybe a desk just got laid off or guys left or something. And so the company opened up all of our desks, all of our trading, all of our technology, all of our phones, all of our lines to our customers, to the people from Cantor and Eurobrokers. And that always stuck with me because, that was, our competitors were really down. I mean, I'm sure, you lose 2/3 of your workforce, and I don't care how good of a company you are, that's going to leave a serious mark.
Can't even imagine.
Yeah, Howard Lutnick only survived, I guess, because his brother died, but he only survived because he had gone to take his kid to the first day of school, so he was there a little bit late. I mean, there's a million of those stories, right?
Yeah.
The guy goes downstairs to get a coffee, saves his life, right? Or somebody. So that always impressed me, and it reminded me in the end that we are just human beings. And yes, okay, we move money for a living, like that's our job, but it's not much of a stretch from moving dental equipment or moving guitars or moving, something like that. Just our product is money itself, is the actual tender in which we are trading. But
yeah,
so that impressed me, and that kind of gave me hope that it's a hard world, like I said, but it's but there are also flashes of altruism out there if you look for it, and you can't really give up on that, and you can't be a cynic. You just be aware, but don't live your life as a cynic, because you'll never trust anyone, and that's no way to live. I mean, on your deathbed, what are you going to say? I didn't trust anyone. I mean,
No, exactly.
And you're going to get screwed every now and then. It's going to happen, but don't lose your faith in humanity.
Well, that's everybody. Teaching moment on the show here with Brad Schaeffer. What you just said there, everybody go back and listen to it again. It just continues to connect the dots, critical thinking wise, to who you are and your true identity growing up as a young man and the adversity, but also, here you're in this profession, but now you're telling us about your experiences in being around this 911 experience, and even how you're talking, Brad. I think, I don't know if you give yourself enough credit, but you've got a very positive side to you, and for me, that's remarkable. And I think that's why everyone has to read your blogs and your work, because in such a tough world, what I'm finding is even reading the book and listening to you gives me that word hope. And I've done a lot of work since my brain injury in 2018, Brad. I've done a lot of healing through neuroplasticity in a brain clinic, but I've learned about neuromodulators and how your brain works. And when we hear hope, when we hear Brad talk about the way he does about hope, the brain releases chemicals, and particularly oxytocin. When it's a tough world and you feel okay, everything's going to be okay, or you're listening to somebody like you, Brad, oxytocin floods my brain. It's like in my brain now I'm saying, like, I kind of like this guy. He's like me in some way, and that really reduces that stress hormone and that cortisol. So that's very, very, very interesting. I want to throw another question out to you, and then we're going to go into the next segment, which I think you're going to love, called Imagining with AI. And this one is really about, we look at all the things that you do outside of just the commodity trading, and I call this balancing success with creativity. So here we go. You've managed to balance a career in trading with your passions for, as well as writing and music passions. So how do these different aspects inform each other, and how have they helped you navigate the highs and lows of both those worlds?
Well, I mean, you may have seen some videos out there that playing an instrument, is the only time, and again, anybody out there who's in the medical field can correct me, but from what I understand, it's the only time when all of your brain cylinders are firing at once. Right? It's not the same as listening to music, but if you're actually playing it, you actually have a guitar strapped around you, you're at a keyboard or something like that, your whole brain is firing up. And so that's why I've always, I recently ran for my board of ed. I didn't win, but they weren't ready for me.
Well, we'll
give ready for the
you just won here.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And but one of the things that they were doing was they were cutting the arts, and I didn't like that, because I feel it's more than just a hobby. I think it definitely helps your brain. I mean, you familiar with brain injury, I'm sure you're well aware of that research. So that to me is, plus it's a great way to unwind. It's a great way to, there's a lot of pressure during the day, so it's a great way to decompress. I was an artist before I was a trader. I was a musician before I was a trader. So really, what I've discovered is that there is an art to trading, which I didn't realize. I always thought it was just mathematical. It was just, and without the correct math, of course, you're hopeless. But there is an art to it, and I kind of touched on it before, which was reading human beings and reading human nature and knowing whether something's a real move or whether something's a sort of a bit of a groupthink going in the wrong direction or something like that. And I think, I think learning the arts can allow you to learn the art of trading as well. And there is a human aspect to it that is hard to put your finger on. And when you study art, you study artists, you study emotion, you study people, and you learn a little bit. Like, there's a big difference in your emotion playing Lady Madonna, for example, as opposed to playing, a Pathetique Sonata by Beethoven, or if you're Chopin's Revolutionary Etude, you can actually hear his passion when Chopin had heard that the Tsar had taken Warsaw. I think that's what that was about. And he was and so you can definitely, it takes you into a different place. Music does, especially. And,
it does.
And it takes you into what was that? One of my favorite lines is from the movie Immortal Beloved with Gary Oldman when he played Beethoven. And he asked Schindler, his assistant, he said, "What is it that makes music so different?" He said, "It forces you to enter into the mental state of the composer. You have no choice." He said, "It's like hypnosis."
That's very cool.
Right? You don't work out to a painting of the Sistine Chapel, right? You don't work out usually listening to a literary work, no matter how powerful, but you will work out listening to AC/DC or something like that. Right?
Exactly.
It actually changes your mood. And what it does is it gets you into the mind of other people. And I think the more people you understand in this world, the better you are able to understand an amalgamation of them. And that really is a market. And I hope that makes sense. But,
No, hey Brad, it makes a lot of sense. What? Just curious, what kind of guitar, or do you like? I know you play piano, but what is it? Acoustic, electric, or what is it?
mostly electric. I have a Gibson SG for years,
Yeah.
but the G string kept getting flat, so I turned it in for a new. I just got a Paul Reed Smith, which I'm very happy about.
Uh-huh.
I've always got my trusty Fender Strat, and in
Yeah.
my office here I've got a beat up old $200 Epiphone.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah,
I love looking at guitars and understanding.
yeah.
So I just want to riff. There's so many things. So when you say things, it brings it out of me. First of all, I wanted to hold this up. I've been listening to a new audiobook, if you can see it there, by Bono called Surrender. And it's fabulous. It won this big award too. It just was released. And throughout it, he's telling stories about his life, the whole journey, stuff I never even understood about him. But he's got his guitar and he's singing and he's playing too. Just fabulous. So anybody, a shameless plug, if you I walk the trails of nature here. I'm actually blessed to be on an inlet. Brad, if you come, we're going to go for a hike. I do 5K a day, but you can literally get in a boat on the inlet, Broad Inlet, where I live, and sail down to the Pacific Rim. That's kind of the part of the world I'm in, Metro Vancouver. But I'll walk through the trails, and I'll put on my headset, listen to music, because I went through depression and all that when I had my brain injury. It was pretty tough. Better now. But this thing about playing, I just want to share this quick story with you that I belong to Toastmasters, an international speaking program. They've been around 100 years, and you prepare 5 to 7 minute speeches, then you go speak to your group, and then you get evaluation feedback. It scares the hell out of you the first time you do it. And I've done quite well. But I did that to improve my brain because I couldn't speak properly and all. And about a month or two ago, I got the courage to pick up my guitar and say, I'm going to go do a speech, but I brought my guitar into it. So I played a song. And man, the part I started writing the speech, and then it just hit me that when I was recovering from my brain injury, I used to pick up the guitar and like, again, I had visual impairment. I had cognitive slowness. So that was part of therapy, is picking it up, getting, like, as you know, putting the fingers down on the fretboard exactly where the transition.
Yeah, absolutely. It does everything. It enhances every part:
Yeah.
Physical, mental, emotional, psychological.
Thank you. So everyone, why I shared that story is because I want to teach something here to the audience on your behalf, and I think you know this. There's a saying I read in my research that the more I know about Brad, the more I know about myself. And so I just doing that particular thing here. Here's a guy, Brad, and he was telling me his story about what happens when you play guitar, what's going on in the brain. That just makes me understand more about, I'm doing okay, because I'm still beating myself up that I'm kind of a loser and a bit broken, but I'm going to pick up my guitar this weekend and have some more fun with it. All right, let's shift gears and go to a segment that I think you're going to love. I'm going to set this up. All you have to do is just listen and follow along and just have some fun. So you ready? Welcome to Imagining with AI. Now, all of you out there, AI, do you like it? Don't you like it? That's not what this is about. But I basically have a relationship with AI. I love my AI relationship. We have conversations. So I said, hey, AI, I got this guy coming on, Brad Schaeffer. And so I told AI, Brad, I said, here's his bio. Here's some things about his book. I even took some of the stuff out of the first interview we did, building this picture of Mr. Brad Schaeffer. I said, okay, AI, I want you to generate 3 pictures. And there's a tool in AI, the ChatGPT, called DALL-E, D-A-L-L-E. It's an image generator. Everybody, I can't draw a stick man, and I find this tool changed my life. So I said, I want you to draw me a picture of the past Brad, of the present Brad, and of the future Brad. And then I'm going to share it with him. So here's what we're going to do, Brad. I'm going to put up each photo. I want you to take it all in. I'm going to read a little description, which will be on the screen. And then I want you to give me one word, just one word of what emotion you might feel. Okay? Can you do that?
Okay.
All right.
That was a little risky, but all right.
Okay. So here we go, everybody. Let me just do something here. All right. So again, are you ready? Drum roll, please. And here is the past Brad Schaeffer. Let me read this out to you while Brad's absorbing it. Past Brad Schaeffer, the word stands a typo, sorry. We call this roots of resilience. The image captures the weight of history and loss that shaped Brad's early years. Growing up in Illinois, Brad's formative years were marked by his father's haunting war stories and eventful tragic death. This period of his life was one of the quiet resilience, filled with both the pain and the loss, and the seeds of strength that would later help him navigate life's challenges. One word, Brad.
Accurate?
Accurate. Isn't that an amazing picture? I'm going to send you these digital assets as a gift, but take a look at the walls in there. This is all AI is just feeding off of what I'm telling you. And if you ever do this with AI, just so, to teach the audience, a picture comes back and they go, no. Brad looks like he's not old enough or he's too young. What about the war impact of the story, etc. And you kind of collaborate. All right, Brad, are you ready for?
We didn't have central air though. We didn't have window units. So.
What's that?
We had central air though. We didn't have.
Okay, there you go. If you were here, I would have known that. All right, here we go. Are you ready? Picture number 2, the present Brad Schaeffer. Drum roll. Present Brad Schaeffer. I call this a life of balance. The present day image of Brad encapsulates a life of balance, multifaceted achievements. As a successful commodities trader, author, and musician, Brad's life is a blend of high-stakes business and creative expression. This phase of his journey is marked by the harmony he has found between his professional success and personal passions. One word.
One word? I would say intense.
Intense.
Yeah, I'm not as intense as that guy looks. More relaxed. That guy looks like the classic master of the universe type.
There you go.
Wolf, the Tom Wolfe type. But,
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more mellow than that.
Brad's more mellow than that, and maybe that's the other side of it when you're in the trading pits and there's an intense moment. It's being able to see yourself in a different perspective. Who knows? Everybody, what I want you to do is, as you watch his back, what we're seeing here is the change in Brad's body language. Brad, I'm talking about you now. When these pictures come up, watch Brad. You'll see an inflection in his voice, his body language, and watch what's happening in terms of him connecting the dots. All right, the last picture is the future Brad. This one is always crazy because I try to get imagining something that isn't here yet, Brad. So this doesn't mean it is what it is. Yeah. So here we go. Future Brad, impactful legacy. Now let me read this to you. The future image projects Brad's enduring legacy, where his contributions as an author, trader, and musician have left an indelible mark on society. This vision of the future highlights the lasting influence of his work, where technology, art, and commerce intersect to create a more enlightened and harmonious world. One word.
Overreach. I don't think I'll be put on a pedestal anywhere. But as long as I influence the people that I'm concerned with, then that matters. But it's flattering. I will say it's also flattering.
Okay, there it is, flattering. So I'm just going to riff on that for a minute. Everybody, we're going to give an applause to Brad for playing along, imagining AI. Brad, you're awesome. This is the thing, everyone. Brad, you're a serious guy. Dig deeper into accepting the greatness within you. And there it was when you said flattering. Look for the greatness within you. And these photos, when I look at this one particularly, and I look at the image of you and the tails, which is the music piece, but I look at the world around, the technology, the evolution. What is your work? And there's even some technology and stuff wired in here. If you think about it, commodities trading, what will the world look like? This is just, to me, a very evocative photo. So, Brad, we're going to send those to you as a gift. Digital assets.
I'm trying to figure out what the bus is doing in that picture.
Yeah, well, we'll get you to send me a blurb on who do you think's in the bus? Maybe that's the Beatles. Maybe they're coming back to tell you a story.
Happy about that.
Exactly. All right, Brad. Now to honor you, my friend, because you've given us a good amount of your time today, I want to put something else on the screen. Everyone, I've got this other action cam in the studio here, so you can see this. And as you know, I've got the book here, and I've read it. And went as far as doing this. I've posted a 5-star review on Amazon for Brad. Now, I want to do a shout out before I show you that review, Brad, that an author's work isn't known unless we read it and readers then say what they like about it. So I recommend you get Brad's book, read it, but go on Amazon, goodreads.com, wherever Brad hangs out, he'll tell you, post a review. These reviews are looked at by bookstore sales reps and people like that in the industry who see a buzz around the book, and as Amazon Analytics. I do tons of reviews because I'm a published author, and so this one is really worthy. So are you ready, Brad? Or drum roll, please. I wonder what Tom Dutta thinks of Life in the Pits. Now, I'm going to have to read it. It's a bit of a read, so just stand by here while I sort of scroll it. Amazon 5-star review. I was posted August 19th. Amazon did accept it, so they approved it. So let me just get into it, and I'll send the copy off Amazon to you. The 5-star review. I called it an electrifying journey into the heart of trading, of the trading pits. Brad Schaeffer's Life in the Pits is a masterclass in storytelling, plunges readers into the chaotic and thrilling world of the commodities trading floors of Chicago, New York. From the first page, Brad, I was transported back to an era when true grit, guts, and perhaps a bit of greed were the currencies of the day. Schaeffer's narrative brilliantly captures what it was like to stand shoulder to shoulder with those fellow traders, battling for financial gains and survival. And this is key in a high-octane environment that today's automated systems could never replicate, in my opinion. As someone who spent years in the banking industry and often wondered about life on the trading floor, Brad, I found this book particularly resonant. Schaeffer's account isn't just about mechanics of trading, it's a heroic journey through a world where each day was a test of nerve and endurance. How he describes the raw energy of the pits, the shouting, the jostling, the sheer adrenaline rush of it all, makes it feel as if you're right there in the thick of it with the opening bell. And it's true, when I read this, there was one paragraph where something was going on. It says the opening bell, you felt like you were there, was ringing in your ears. This is classic storytelling at its finest, filled with vivid anecdotes and characters as colorful as the jackets they wear. I was especially moved by your reflections on 9/11 and how the trading community came together in the face of unimaginable tragedy. And finally, Brad, I was especially moved by the reflections. Sorry, that was just a highlight. Duplicate that. The book's format. This is important, everyone, because when you write a book, when you use narrative story, it keeps the brain engaged. It's not just facts. So I think the book's concise yet rich in detail kept me eagerly turning the pages. As a fan of paperbacks, I appreciated the tangible quality of it. It's perfect to carry around, tuck in my jacket pocket or a briefcase. It's ideal companion for those of you that are on the go. Life in the Pits is not just a memoir to me. It's an entertaining, insightful, and at times poignant reflection on a bygone era of trading that I don't know. Whether you're a seasoned trader, everyone, or curious about finance, this book is must read. Brad Schaeffer has crafted a narrative that's both fun and enlightening, a proper tribute, in my opinion, in this wild, wonderful world of the trading pits. I highly recommend it. Congratulations to you, Brad.
Well, I will have your check in the mail for that. Thank you.
You're welcome. So that is up on Amazon now, and I'll be sending you the link so you can pull it off there. Feel free to use it in your marketing or anything. Happy to recommend it. So let me remove that off the screen. When we're moving to wrap up now with Brad, you've heard us go into Plato's Garden and trade stories about his new book. Then Imagining with AI, seeing the past, present, and future of Brad, what it might look like. Those are striking images. And most importantly, highly rate the book. And let me now honor you with some leadership words. Now, Brad, when I'm interviewing, you might have experienced this last time, I write on my paper words, they just come into my head about you. The first one is wisdom. And I call it like it's timeless wisdom. This book is about that. Facts and information that really, when my daughter reads this book, she would never have known about this chapter in history of commodities trading. Two is love. It comes from you, and particularly how you've written the book, but when you talk about how your parents shaped you and how that comes through in the story, that truly is a leadership trait of love. Creative, and creativity is something that I think all leaders should have. Not all have it. and you've managed to weave that into your work, Brad, which I think shows through and makes you why you're very relatable, but also somebody that I think people should spend some time with. So on that note, now that he's blushing and humbled, Brad, let's give it back to you and tell everybody how to get a hold of you. And the last word for you would be in this line here. Here's a thought to think about. If you could go back to those chaotic days in the pits, with everything you know now, is there anything you'd do differently? And I guess think about your younger self telling them about what you did.
I think I would have stayed in the floor longer than I did.
Yeah.
I would have not moved around so much. I would have stayed put in Eurodollars and tried to learn it a little bit more. But I kind of had the travel. I kind of had the bug, so that's how I ended up in New York. The best. And just for those who do buy this, I try to put in, like, one of my favorite books on trading is the book Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, that was written by Edwin Lefevre, about Jesse Livermore, the great commodities trader in the 1920s. It was written 100 years ago, which I was actually happy that my book came out 100 years later. And it has a lot of trading insight too, that a lot of traders look at to this day. It's actually one of the most quoted books on the book Market Wizards. So
Really?
this book's 100. So the point is that the book's 100 years old and it's still relevant, which tells you that markets are, in the end, still human constructs. The mechanism of trading changes, but the people who make the decisions haven't changed because human nature hasn't changed. So if you figure that out, you should do all right. And there's pointers in the book about how to overcome the demons within you. Like, most people are not hardwired for trading; they're hardwired for the opposite, I think.
Yes.
They're hardwired to let their losers run because they hope it comes back, and they're hardwired to get out of their winners early because they want to take the profit. You got to flip that. He says it. Lefevre says it in his book, and I just reiterate it in mine. So I think if you buy this book, hopefully it saves you the money that you paid for it by just preventing you from doing one stupid trade or one bad decision or hanging on to a position just one hour too long when you should have gotten out of it when you should have and all that. So hopefully that helps.
Throw it up on the screen one more time, just while you're saying that. There it is.
So there you go.
Perfect.
Yep, and you can buy it on Amazon. Brad Schaeffer, Life in the Pits. You can Simon and Schuster website. You can go right on there, and they have it for sale as well. If you go on my Substack, you'll see a lot of my articles. Like I write a lot for Daily Wire, especially. I just have a series on the Battle of Saipan and Daily Wire. So
yeah.
But also a lot of stuff that I can't find at home for just because it doesn't fit the ideological predilection of the group or whomever. Not because it's not good writing. I put up on my Substack, or I'll republish some stuff that I put on pay sites after the fact. So you can find me on Substack. So just type in Brad Schaeffer, author. Make sure it's the author, because there's actually a Brad Schaeffer who's a podiatrist who spells his name the exact same way I do, who lives in New Jersey, like I do, and he's become sort of a reality star. I guess he was in one of those Iron Man shows. Oh, yeah. So he's kind of like, if you type in Brad Schaeffer, you'll get like, boy, my feet are killing me. And I get emails like what to do with bunions and stuff. I'm like, I don't know. I'm wondering if he ever gets asked advice on where crude oil is going. I hope it goes his way as well. But so anyway, so just type in Brad Schaeffer, author, and you'll find it.
Yeah, it's great. And we have the stock ticker, those doing the visual, Brad Schaeffer at substack.com. So on the screen there. Brad, it's been fascinating. I'm putting you on the spot here. The world's kind of crazy and whatnot. What do you see ahead in the next couple of years with the markets? I know that's unfair because there's an election and a war that's out in Europe and all.
Well, I mean, the thing that I think looms above the markets overall is the national debt. $34 trillion in national debt. Well, we're now starting to pay more for debt service than we are for the military, which is the first time, and we have over, I believe it's 115 times GDP in national debt now. And the last time we were above 100 was during World War II, but that's because we were building B-24 Liberators and, and Iowa-class battleships, right? We weren't just spending it on stimulus and all these other things. So I think it's hard for me to imagine a world with that much deficit without hyperinflation at some point. And hyperinflation might be good for stocks, but it's not going to be good for your bottom line if you make 20% in the markets, but your dollar diminishes by 25%, right? That doesn't. and you can't go to the shopping mart buying, using your 401k, right?
Yeah.
So I think the rich are going to get richer in this environment. I think both parties are subservient to the donor class, whether Republican or Democrat. So I don't have much faith in this election. You've got one guy who's got the establishment so against him that the inertia he's going to face, even if he does win, is beyond. They're literally trying to put him in jail and shit. They might even try to assassinate him for all we know. I don't know.
Yeah.
You got somebody else who is just a rubber stamp of the military-industrial complex and the donor class. So, unless you have mathematics is going to be the final arbiter of things, and eventually you can't sustain deficits forever like this in national debt without some sort of day reckoning. The question is, when will it come? I don't know. I mean, I see hyperinflation in the future, so I see interest rates going up to offset it. So I see, bond futures maybe coming off. I don't really know. Honestly, my trading environment is horizon is pretty much. I'm a statistical arbitrager.
Yeah.
So I look at one value against another. But I think if I gun to my head, I mean, I'd be in stocks because it's the best place to be. But I'd move some money into short bonds or something like that if I had to. But I know I'm going to watch this a year from now and be totally wrong. So.
Yeah, I think that's a book I would love to. That could be a bestseller book for future. I'd love to see you write a book about just as a trader, all that technical knowledge in your head, translate that, and navigate the stories of sort of the major events that have happened in the markets. I have to tell you this before I wrap up with you. You're being so great giving me your time. What scares the hell out of me, and by the way, I'm a faith-based man, and I was baptized Catholic, and I fell onto my faith again. Yeah, is everybody rely on your faith. I have a one-to-one relationship with Jesus Christ, my Lord, and in a time where there's so much worry, live in faith. And what scares the hell out of me, Brad, is in my thesis, and thank you for doing the interview, which is part of it, that I'm looking at media, the sector of media. And I've dug deep over last year into mainstream, but also into non-mainstream in a way I've never done. So I've got feeds and links to apps and to YouTube channels of so many media outlets that you no longer can tell what's fact or fiction.
Yeah,
it is scary, and I think about my young daughter and things. So I think why the wrap up on this and the tie into what you're doing is, when you have a person like you, Brad, come along and you write books, you try to educate, you write blogs and your Substack and things to try and give us as much truth or at least informed knowledge. I think that really everybody go past mainstream and start digging and finding your own answers.
Yeah, I think data is the biggest tell. You have to look for data, and everybody has a bit of a bias. I admit I do. I'm not a fan of communism, for example.
Me neither.
Solzhenitsyn enough to know that doesn't work out. I'm not a fan of Nazism. I've written enough about World War II to know that Austrian corporal was not a good guy. But what concerns me the most right now is not the republic. We've had contentious elections forever. If anybody's curious what an ugly election looked like, look up the election of 1800 between Jefferson and Adams. I mean, they were throwing mud at each other that no one would say today. Or look up the quote-unquote corrupt bargain of John Quincy Adams when he supposedly stole the office from Andrew Jackson. So this stuff's been going on forever. But the difference now is that because of technology, we have a media on both sides, but it does lean left because the data just shows it leans left, right? For every Fox, you're going to have 5 NBCs or something.
That's right.
And the problem is that when media no longer sees itself as a watchdog of the state, but as a lapdog of it, because there's this pipeline between, if you notice how many people were in government are now in media, and then on the board,
of course,
or then in the college campus and back, right? I mean, you've got a Fox host who used to be George Bush's press secretary. You've got an MSNBC host who used to be Joe Biden's secretary, George Stephanopoulos with Bill Clinton's, So you've got this whole media complex thing going on here. And what happens is, people don't go on, I don't think people go on media to be informed anymore. I think they go on media to have their opinions validated. So if you're of the right and you want something bad about Joe Biden, just go on Fox, you'll find it. Right? You're of the left and you want something bad about Trump, just go on
Yeah.
at MSNBC, and you'll find it. But if you want, I think one of the reasons what attracts me to trading and why I do this as a living is because in the end, it doesn't matter what your opinion is. 7 is higher than 6. 6 is higher than 5. You buy it at 3, you sell it at 8, you made 5 ticks. You buy it at 3, you sell it at 2, you lost 1 tick. And there's no getting around it. You can make an argument for why we should have bought this till the cows come home. But the bottom line is, in the end, the market tells you whether or not you're right or wrong. And the thing I love about mathematics is that there is a right or a wrong. And I think, I would love media to be, I always joke that if the Pentagon Papers came out today, as opposed to 71, I think it was, that the media would say it has all the hallmarks of North Vietnamese disinformation.
Yeah.
They wouldn't report the news and report this scandal, right?
Absolutely.
They would run cover if it was their people in the White House, and they would try to expose it if it wasn't. And that's not the function of media on either side. And, that's what, because the Republic can't survive without a free media. That's why I love what Elon Musk is doing with Twitter. I may not agree with all the people that he allows on. I'm no fan of Alex Jones, for example, even though he's actually gotten some things right. But what he did with the Newtown, I think, is disgusting. But he has a right to speak, and the free market of ideas, sunlight's the best disinfectant. I love what Elon Musk is doing in that respect, because without a free press, there is no republic, right? I mean, without a watchdog. And that's what really concerns me more than anything. It's not government dysfunction. That's always been with us. It's
exactly.
It's the media not doing their job. And I'd say the same thing if 90% of the media was all Fox, right? People think I'm of the right or whatever. I mean, I lean that way because of my business. But I wouldn't want to get all my news from Sean Hannity any more than I want to get all my news from Keith Olbermann, right?
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to, first of all, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. Everybody, Brad Schaeffer, author of several books, commodities trader. Brad, when I was saying about media, I think the media has, and the sector I play in is media. It's podcasts, published books. I've got some film radio work, as well as being a trainer, a teacher of executives. That was my background. I think media has a responsibility. It's a huge power they're given, responsibility to report factual information and get the truth out so people can do the right things. And I think it's failed, but I think the thread, and we'll wrap it on this, the thread I've learned is by reading your book about the commodities floor, the thread of technology, how it's changed that game. I believe that mainstream media is dead. When you look at the actual number of people who watch some of the shows, I'm not going to give them free press here, it's literally millions or less. When you have 350 million people in your country, I mean, Canada, add that on, most of the next gens, my daughter is 26, people like that, they are using technology. They're going to find alternate sources. I love the exchanges and things like that too. It gives me, but I'm starting to find the truth, and then I'm starting to be an advocate to share and get that out there to people who really, my mom's 88 and she doesn't have a cell phone. She doesn't have the internet. She watches CNN. That's how she gets her news. But dude, I think you're right. I think the future is bright. Hope is huge, because the whole media game is changing, and I believe that it's going to make the world better. On that note, thanks for being on the Quiet Warrior Show, Brad. We'll have you back again anytime. I want to talk more to you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Everybody, find that true passion like you hear from Brad Schaeffer, and find that life that you deserve and live the life that you desire. And we'll see you all again on the Quiet Warrior Show. Take care.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.